Guardian down.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for hanging out with us today on this special extra episode where we talk about the movie Dune. And who else to have us talk about the movie Dune with me and Hazel is Mr. Nullzy. Thanks, man. Appreciate you coming on the show today and talking about Dune in depth. And you've read the book. Hazel's read the book. I have not read the book, technically. It was too long ago, and I don't remember, and I'm old. I did buy the audiobook, or I'm going to buy the audiobook, so I will be caught up with these knuckleheads, hopefully. And we'll be able to talk more as we get closer to the next Dune movie. So here we go. Without further ado, let's get into it.
You mean without further ado?
Sorry, Nullzy. Hey, thanks for listening to Guardian Downcast. You can find us on Twitter at Guardian_D_cast.
Or, you can find us on Instagram at Guardian_Down_cast and see what pics our weekly guests want to share with you.
Or Hazel, just visit our website at GuardianDowncast.com for all the contact information and where else you want to find us. And you can also play any past episodes you like in any order you like, right from your browser.
Don't you or me, man. Anyway, so hey, Guardians, check us out, and later, Guardians.
Toddles.
Hey, that's my line, man.
Just some general information here. Dune was released on October 22nd, it's last week. I'm looking at Rotten Tomatoes here, 83% from critics, 91% from audience. It's even up higher than it was last week. So I have a feeling a lot of people are enjoying this movie. It is based on the 80s remake of the 80s movie that came out. I think it was 1984.
Well, it's based on a book.
Based off of different a movie.
Yes. But I'm
take on a 60s book.
I'm basing it off of the movie, which is what I really remember.
Ugh.
Okay. The director is Denis Villeneuve. And if you don't know, he did also direct Blade Runner 2049, which I just bought a 4K DVD of from Amazon. Thank you, Amazon. So it's forever now. Timothée Chalamet did play Paul Atreides as the heir of House Atreides. Oscar Isaac as Duke, Paul's father. Josh Brolin was Gurney. Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron. Jason Momoa as Duncan, Paul's mentor. Dave Bautista as Glossu Robin, the Baron's nephew. And is there anybody I'm missing here? I know there was some female...
Rebecca Ferguson.
Yes.
Rebecca Ferguson, who's arguably like the most important character in the whole first movie.
Nah, not at all.
She might have had a good part in this movie. Yes. Yeah. It was about 2.5 hours long.
45, I think.
Yeah, it was a long movie. And, but I tell you what, every minute I was glued to this and watched it. So for me, I'll give you my general impressions. For me, it was like a replay of the 80s movie, but just done so much better. So much better. And I got to say, I'm probably not qualified that I probably read the book a long time ago, but I don't remember enough about it. So I'm basing it off the 80s remake of the movie. And I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. And I mentioned this last week. So, I mean, we're not getting into spoilers yet. Hazel, what do you think? What was your general impressions of the movie?
So I liked what was there for the most part. My issues all stem from the book, basically the source material.
Okay.
So, I mean, I watched it again today.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched it day one when it came out. And then I watched the 80s Dune because I don't think I ever saw it. So I ended up watching that last week. And then I rewatched the 2021 one now, or like today.
Right.
So I mean, my view on it is still kind of the same, where my issues with it are just like, basically like this guy just wakes up and has powers.
Yeah, I mean it's Hollywood, man. They have to abbreviate a lot of the movie to make it,
But
consumable.
I mean, it was that way in the book as well.
Was it really? He just woke up with the powers. Okay.
I mean, he didn't really wake up with. I mean, there was like they just say like, "Hey, I've been training you for X amount of time since you were born,"
right.
And it's like, okay, but you don't see any of that. It's like, I don't know.
Well, the whole point of the shield scene is kind of the glimpse into that training regimen.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of just quickly summarize it. I get what you're saying on that, but that's a little, even for me, a little too. Of all the things to nitpick, that is not my problem.
All right. Well, general Nullzy, general impressions. Yep. What do you think? Generally,
I think the cinematography was astounding. I think it was the best looking movie of 2021, and honestly, probably the last few years.
Yes.
Yes.
I think the sound design was amazing, with the small exception of there was a few musical cues that were in the whisper scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Which was a little tricky to clearly make out what they were saying.
Oh, where it kind of faded out and then faded in really strong.
No, I'm not even talking about I'm avoiding spoilers. Not talking about that. I'm talking about a specific scene where Paul and his mother are having a conversation in kind of hushed undertones, and Hans Zimmer's soundtrack is just like, man. I'm like, guy, not the time.
See. I remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's a nitpicky thing. I think Hans Zimmer did an amazing job. And I love Toto's soundtrack on the Lynch version.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he really kind of grasped a lot of the themes of the story with he did the John Williams thing where he told a story without using words.
It was well done.
You can listen to the soundtrack and the movie will replay in your head. Yeah,
it sounds about right. And just, I mean, if you've watched Blade Runner 2042, 2043. Yep. I can't remember that exact year, but it reminded me very much. I mean, like I mentioned last week, set design is so important to me. It has to feel real. It has to feel like I'm literally hovering right there in the room with Harrison Ford, So, yeah, bravo. I mean,
and then acting performances. Rebecca Ferguson, if she does not at least get nominated for an Oscar,
very good acting.
And there was discrepancies between her performance and the book, but for the movie, it made perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the director had a certain vision because he was part of the screen-writing too. He's a fan of Dune, and you can tell, and that was the biggest thing. Yes. Like David Lynch was not a fan of Dune. Okay.
To this day, he refuses to acknowledge that movie even exists.
Oscar Isaac, definitely well cast. I mean, man does he just nails everything he does. I've watched so many different things with him in it lately. Timothy Chalamet. Good, bad?
I think he was great. I think he was overshadowed by literally everyone around him, and I don't know if that's even his fault.
Yeah.
The other performances were so good that that's honestly his character. The more you get into the books, it's actually he did it perfectly because his character is not the most important character.
Right.
He's the main character.
Right.
But he's not the most important in any scene he's in.
The emphasis isn't on him usually. Yeah. It's setting up the main story. Hazel, do you want to say something?
Yeah, what got me though is that there's like some controversy about Zendaya only being in it for like 8 minutes apparently.
Really?
But that's a controversy. She's going to be the entire next movie.
Oh, she will be. She will be.
But anyone who knows is like, no, that makes sense.
Yeah,
but she's actually in there way more than the books.
Yeah, but the thing is though is that for me, every scene that she's in, she just like owns that scene, and it seems like she's in it more just because whenever she's on the screen, you're just like paying attention to her.
Well, it's mainly
the whole point is
it was mainly dream. It was mainly dream sequences, and then at the end, you finally get to meet her. She's finally in the frame and in the scene.
Right. I know, but I'm just saying though that people are like, oh, well, she's only in it for this long, and this and that and the other thing. But for me, I'm like, every time she's on, it just seems like she just like takes over everything.
Oh, she chews the scenery.
Right.
She doesn't even speak. She has like
maybe
30 seconds words. Of dialogue.
Maybe, yeah.
Like half of her is just standing there and brooding, and that's enough. I mean, that's the whole cast. That's the thing is they might have overcast the movie.
I'm looking at this cast list. It's just amazing.
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out how they're going to divvy up the
profits.
How are they going to divvy up the profits on this movie? I mean, Stellan Skarsgård. What did you think as far as the Baron? What did you think about him?
Okay, hold on. So I think we should hold off on those specific analysis because they're like what we would have to get into.
Yeah. I have comments about the Baron as well. So this will be the point where we say, if you do not want to be spoiled and you have not seen the current film yet, this is where we're going to start diving a little bit deeper into the movie. So I will put a timestamp in our show notes when to join back in if you want to fast forward past this part. And fair warning, there will be spoilers from here on out.
And an additional disclaimer, I might delve a little bit deeper into the books and the lore on things. Okay. So if you've seen the movie and you don't want the next one to be spoiled, you may also want to tune out at this point.
Good point. If you are curious how the
if you aren't at least familiar with the Lynch movie, I'm not going to go too deep into the books, but if you're not at least familiar with the Lynch movie, I would say.
Yeah, if you don't want to be spoiled on what possibly the second movie will be, and we're speculating, of course, but if it's based on the book and the Lynch movie in the 80s, yes, we can get into that. So, all right, fair warning. Okay, go ahead.
We're still on the Baron. The good Baron, Vladimir Harkonnen.
Let's jump into Baron. And I just want to say, the Baron in the Lynch movie was disgusting. He was a pedophile. He was a creep. He's
supposed to be.
Yes, but you notice how they cleaned his image up for this movie?
And that's one of my complaints.
That was one of my complaints, too. It was very Darth Vader. You know what I'm saying?
His whole character, I mean, this is explicit in the books, but they don't really talk about it even in the Lynch movie. He was cursed by the Bene Gesserit.
Right.
To look like that. He's supposed to be grotesque. He's supposed to be this hideous form. And they kind of got some of that, and they definitely, Stellan Skarsgård's performance, especially in the tooth scene, we'll call it that. I mean, I guess we're in spoiler sections.
Yes.
Where he's just casually eating at the table. It's not a big deal. He's just filling his face as he's taunting a completely paralyzed Leto Atreides.
Yes.
Naked,
as he's about to kill him.
Naked.
Oh my God.
Yes. And he's just, eating all of the food from the pantry while this is going on. It was that's a really good kind of character building moment. But I think the big thing aesthetically that people complain about, and all of the iterations that they did right in this, was his little repulsors and how they work and how he's not flying around the room. They kind of aid him. He has a lichy, wraithy vibe, but he wasn't floating around the room. The whole thing, when he does to survive, that was a huge moment because they didn't realize he was going to be able to do that. They thought he was dead.
Mm-hmm. Right. He was curled up.
They kind of help him move. They're more the opposite of a scuba belt to keep that neutral buoyancy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, and they nailed that. They absolutely nailed that. They nailed his methodical thinking, and he's Kingpin in this. He's not this comic book character. He's, one of the big things they left out of the overall story, and we'll get into that. I'm sure this is one of the things Hazel wants to talk about, is the whole, plans within plans within plans aspect of Dune.
Mm-hmm.
The Baron is a mastermind. And the Lynch movie made him seem like this comic book villain. He was like the Penguin, he was goofy and kind of idiotic. And he is the orchestrator of all of these events. He's 4 steps ahead of everyone else. And I think that Stellan absolutely brought that to him as a character. I think conversely, Bautista as the Beast Ravan.
Mm-hmm.
That one small scene when they are, in Arrakeen in the palace, and he just lines up all of the Atreides that surrendered and is just beheading them one by one,
right?
Mm-hmm.
In a line.
Mm-hmm.
Really emphasizes he is, the Baron's fist. And one of the major storylines they seem to have left out is that the Baron sends him to Arrakis first to kind of be the bad cop. To what will be Fade's good cop, which we'll see if Fade even exists, which is another weird tangent we'll end up on.
Well, I have a question here before we move on. Why didn't the Sting character come out in this movie instead?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
That's
what he's saying.
Yeah, because Rabin was kind of the dumbass in the first movie. He was kind of the...
He was more supposed to be, though. He's the muscle. He's the brute.
I was just going to say that. He was supposed to be the brute, right? And
whereas Fade is worse than him in every way, but he's the charismatic leader. He's the pretty one, even though he's a monster.
Right. I'm just curious why they didn't use him in the movie. I just didn't understand.
There's a theory that they're combining Raban into both characters.
Okay.
Which is controversial, but I get it if they do. And I think Bautista, especially after like the last few movies he's done, like Army of the Dead, and I think he has that capability of being, because Fade ultimately is a plot device. Like, he's not really a character, even in the books. Like, his whole point is to be Paul's antagonist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're supposed to.
He never had an antagonist in the first movie. I mean,
well, that's even that, as I'm saying. So, like, Fade, that's a weird one. If they're gonna make it one character, I'm kind of okay with that. I would prefer that they have someone. I mean, a Bill Skarsgård as Fade, I think, would be fantastic. I think he's got the chops. I think he can be menacing enough. I think he can pull, a little bit of that Pennywise love out to just be creepy and uncomfortable, while also being Stellan Skarsgård's son. Even though it's his nephew, but 6-1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that going back to the casting, like, I think everyone did perfectly. I mean, Jason Momoa is Duncan Idaho.
What about Javier Bardem?
Javier Bardem as Stilgar is, oh god,
it was good. I thought that was really good too.
So much better than the Lynch one. The Lynch one was, and that's the issue with the Lynch, and that's the difference between this and the Lynch movie. If you want to compare the movies, which you really can't, but if you're going to, the Lynch movie had all of the stupid exposition as the books. Like they felt the need to tell you everything, whereas Denis really showed you everything.
Yeah, he did.
I think the best example of this, and it's a beautiful scene, it's the one I keep referencing because it's getting memed to death, but it's also visual storytelling on Seleucus Secundus. Where it's originally a prison planet, or everyone thinks it's a prison planet, but it's actually the secret training grounds of the Sardaukar.
Yeah.
That almost religious fanaticism, and that, they exist to serve the Emperor. Like, they showed that so well, without actually saying anything.
No, didn't have to.
At all. There's the bargain between Peter DeVries, which I don't think Peter's name is even mentioned in this movie. Which is a point that, again, I'm sure, I know for a fact Hazel's chomping at the bit on. Is Mentats. But Denis was able to show so much. The inclusion of... we'll get into that later.
I mean, it was 2.5 hours. So, I mean, I think 3 hours is just... It's hard to do a 3-hour movie anymore these days. I don't know. I think
he does it.
I wonder how much was cut out of this movie is what I'm thinking. But
he said not much was cut out.
Really?
Like, everything that's in it is what he wanted in it.
Wow, that's rare.
Jason Momoa seems to have a different opinion on it.
Does he?
Yeah, he wants a director's cut.
And they have cut stuff because there's stills of like Gurney with the balisette.
I saw that. You showed me that.
Which is, so like they filmed that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, just a small scene with that, I think a lot of people would have shut up about their nitpicky stuff. Not important. None of that was important. They left out important stuff, which I get. He wanted to make it digestible, so I don't fault him for it.
Yeah. But one thing I said last week was that this was almost like a casual's guide to Dune.
It is. Perfect example. That's a beautiful way of describing it.
And it was like gut-wrenching to me because one of the scenes in the book that I read that I actually just absolutely loved was nowhere in the book or in the movie at all. It was the dinner party. And it was just this, like, it had so much fucking tension in this scene. And I'm just reading this and I'm just like, oh my God, this is fantastic. I mean, we got like these people here and they're talking shit about these people. And I mean, there's just like all this stuff going on and political intrigue.
No one knows what CHOAM is, which is like the most important part of Dune is CHOAM. Like it all centers around this collective. And then similar note, and actually adjacent to that scene, like the whole Mentat subplot, the betrayal subplot, like the whole tension between Leto and Jessica and how he knows these things that he cannot tell her about, or vice versa. Her knowing that, Shut Up Mapes, who's, again, they introduced her the same way, set her up. I'm like, oh, they're doing the Mape story. This is wonderful. And then killed her with no reason. Like, why do we care? Like, the whole reason why you care in the books is because where Paul stops the hunter-seeker, it was going after her.
Right.
And he saves her. So she tells him and Jessica that the Fremen know there's a traitor among them, but they don't know who it is.
Yeah, but we don't even get time to fucking digest that thought.
Yeah. And
you
like,
know,
the whole thing of her getting stabbed in the back with her own Chris knife. Like,
it's like shit just went.
You don't know why that's important.
Yeah.
And so important. And Peter DeVries, who's like, he's such a menacing, just like slimy character who's the one pulling all of the strings with Yui. And they don't talk about Yui in his story barely. Like,
not at all.
How he's supposed to be incorruptible. He has this, imperial training that like, that's what the tattoo on his forehead, the diamond on his forehead, that's so important in the visual storytelling. They don't say why that's important. And that's a symbol of his imperial conditioning, that he was always going to be loyal to the Atreides family, which ultimately he was. Like, he has this faults where, like, yes, the Baron, tells him his wife is kidnapped. And so he's torn, but like his last, like, act of loyalty is replacing Leto's tooth and, killing the Baron as well. And like getting the signet ring to Paul. And like doing all this, like, I everything about me hates this, but I have to do it. He has my wife, but let me do this to make it up to you. And like, there's a really important scene when he's having that conversation with Leto where he tells him everything and he's like, I couldn't. And there's all these connections that were much more emotional that just weren't in the movie. And that sucked because that is such an important story for the first act of the book. Is that no one trusts anyone, including, family members. Jessica, who loves Leto so much, cannot tell him that there's a traitor because she's trying to find this traitor while protecting him. Yeah. She can't tell him that Paul's constantly a danger. He doesn't know any of this. He's just the loving father, which they did well. But like the whole idea is that like he's oblivious to all of this other stuff.
And he even admitted that. He even admitted that he knew something was going on, but he turned a blind eye to it and did not get involved with it. So,
it's not really. That it was just like there was just so much more.
So much deeper.
That they could have done. They could have included, the scene where Paul saves Mapes, and then her death would at least be important. You don't need to know the Mentat betrayal storyline,
right?
Or why Thufir Hawat. Like they glaze over it. He was portrayed very well, but like they don't explain that these Mentats are human supercomputers. And we're not going to get into the Butlerian Jihad and all of the lore of why they need that. Well, you can skip that.
It's because we were basically computers almost took us out. So we swore off computers, right? That's why we have the Mentats.
By swore off, you mean go to a centuries-long nuclear war with computers?
Yeah, yes, that's what I meant. Yeah.
But like even in the Lynch movie, like they have the ritual with the Sappho juice, and like by my will alone, I set my mind in motion. Like, you don't need to know what's going on. Instead, the Mentats' eyes just roll back in their head and all of a sudden math.
Right.
And I'm like, you're short selling how important these people are. And then again, talking about the second movie and talking about giant spoiler alerts, guys, but if you're here this far, sorry, how the Baron captures Thufir, instead of killing him and basically turns him into his personal pet, where he's just like, he treats him with disdain, like these super important, super intelligent people. He's just like, well, I need a new Mentat, so I guess you'll do.
Yeah, because that poison killed.
Meanwhile, Thufir, who's still loyal to the Atreides family and is doing everything he can, is like being torn by, having to do this or be killed in a brutal way. Or, and he's slowly trying to work behind the scenes to sabotage the Harkonnen. Which is another thing it is Harkonnen and per Frank Herbert, but the Harkonnen pronunciation of the Lynch movies has become canon.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of discrepancies there too.
I've read about that.
But like they talk about the Lisad El Gaib, they talk about the Mahdi title, which is, the Fremen word for Messiah. But they don't explain at all that the whole reason, and actually this goes into the controversy right now with Dune, where it's like, oh, it's another white savior story. And I'm like, if anyone who says that, I immediately dismiss. And it's not because they feel the way they do. I dismiss it because it immediately shows that they either do not understand at all what Dune is about, or they haven't watched it or read it or haven't bothered, and they're just going off the BuzzFeed headlines.
See, what worries me about the second movie coming in 2023?
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, that's what I said. I said, oh, well, I guess they're not going to get into the second part of this movie. I'll see you in 2 years. I'm worried a little bit because they covered so much in the first movie. They moved so quickly through the first movie. And now we're getting to kind of past the halfway point if we're going by the Lynch movie. Where he starts learning the special attack from the Fremen.
Oh, that is the thing I hate about. So first off, your facts are a little inaccurate.
Okay,
and I know what you're talking about.
Okay,
and I'll break it down to make you understand why myself, and I'm assuming Hazel, who's also familiar with the books, hates everything about the weirding module.
That was an 80s thing, man.
Paul bringing it to them. Second, doesn't exist in the books at all.
Really?
Third, it's not a thing.
Oh wow.
It's based off of a single line, and it removes all of the importance of that line. And that line is in the movie, and that's when Paul is confronted by his Fedakeen, and they're chanting his name as they're in a frenzy, like a bloodlust.
Mm-hmm.
And he says to himself in horror, like absolute horror, that he's like, my name is a killing word. Like they're using my name as their jihad. And that horrifies him. Instead, Lynch saw that and went, let's make a sci-fi weapon.
I was like, what? I didn't know.
That's not a thing. So the voice is a thing. The voice is a Bene Gesserit
but it's not used as a weapon. Okay.
It is, I mean, in a roundabout way.
It can be. Yeah.
Okay.
Which, by the way, Denny's portrayal of the voice was amazing.
Yes.
And he highlighted that the Bene Gesserit are the most powerful beings in the galaxy and are respected by literally everyone.
They're pretty much ruling everything. Yeah.
The whole White Messiah subplot and why it's ridiculous that anyone's upset about it is that Frank Herbert wrote Dune as like condemning like colonization, condemning the Western Messiah. Like that's the whole point and they skip out on this subplot, which is understandable to an extent, but it makes Dune what it is, that the Bene Gesserit went to Arrakis 1,000 years beforehand and planted the seeds of this story where they would eventually, the whole plots within plots within plots, plans within plans. Like this is something Herbert talked about a lot, where 1,000 years before they started this Lisan al-Gaib myth with the Fremen in order to eventually establish control of Arrakis by introducing this Messiah figure that they created the story of. The fact that the weirding way is not this weird voice gun, but it's an elaborate system of martial arts. It's basically Krav Maga, where these Bene Gesserit not only are mentally stronger than everyone else, but physically, as we saw with Jessica, between the voice and their actual combat prowess, like they're assassins is what they're designed as. They're supposed to be beautiful, intelligent women that are designed to be killing machines. And they skip on all of that, which at least, again, they gave Jessica her flowers, and she really is the star of this movie, I think.
I remember in the latter part of the Lynch movie that Paul's mother has a child, and it's a girl, and she's very strong with the what do you call it?
The abomination is what they call it.
Yes. And I'm trying to remember, how does she get with the Baron? And how does she get into the Baron's mind? I'm trying to remember how that happened. Did he kidnap her?
Abomination.
Yeah, she just shows up.
She just shows up. That's what I remember. I was like, where did she come from? Okay. She's mentally torturing the Baron the whole time. He's like, stop it. Quit talking to me.
Yeah.
So, and that's something I think Denny is going to try and do, and why I think that there's a lot more to the story, and why I talked about Dune Messiah earlier. Dune Messiah is the sequel to Dune, and it speaks of Paul the jihadist.
Okay.
It's Paul's crusade, where he realizes ultimately that he was misled. And he I think it was something like killed like 30 billion life forms across like 600 planets in his jihad. And they touch on that in this first movie, which is why I think they're going to do Dune Messiah, which is not in the books. He doesn't know about the jihad until much, much later. But, you know, the ignite the galaxy in unquenchable fire.
Right.
Paul is not the hero. by any stretch. And his son is Space Hitler. His son is, so the whole plot of Dune Messiah is that Paul realizes what he's doing as he's doing it, and the Fremen are becoming these bloodlusted war machines, going from planet to planet, eradicating populations in his name.
But didn't Lynch tie that in a nice pretty bow in the 80s movie?
Not at all. They didn't touch any of that.
No, I mean, didn't he in the movie where everyone lived happily ever after kind of bullshit?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly, yeah. He fairy tailed it. Which
now,
Dune Messiah is.
Yay, genocide.
Eventually Paul blinds himself intentionally by staring directly into his house atomics as they're igniting all over Arrakis.
Now I'm going to
go read Dune Messiah?
And I'm going to go get the book. And I'm going to listen to the audiobook.
And they can very easily build that into a third movie. So I think
that was my question.
Some of that story. Yeah.
Do you think there'll be 2 more movies or 1 more movie?
I think 2 more. I don't think they're going to do Children of Dune because that's a whole different story arc. I hope they do in another trilogy.
Okay.
I want to see what he does with Children of Dune because that's about Leto 2 and his sister, and his ascent to the God Emperor of Dune, which is a whole where he becomes a sandworm effectively. But he's also on the golden path and has all of the same powers that Paul had. So he basically controls the galaxy from Arrakis.
Right.
For 30,000 years or something. Jeez. I forget the exact thing. Yeah, there's a lot to explore there.
My biggest fear going into this next movie in 2023 is that there's going to be a lot of crappy filler in the middle because they went so quickly. You don't think so?
There's you don't so think much so? They can do still. There's so much of that. So what your issue is you saw the Lynch movie.
Like I said, I'm basing this off the Lynch movie, and I'm like, well, wait a minute.
Lynch cut a ton out.
He learns this new power. He rides the sandworms in and kills the Baron. Game over. How are they going to put all that into a second movie? So I hope Denny puts a lot of this in.
And actually, this 3-year gap, to those of us that know the story, is beautiful if it was intentional. Because between book 1 and book 2 in Dune, there's about a 2 or 3 year gap where Paul is kind of becoming a Fremen.
Well,
so when we see him in this next movie, if it doesn't pick up immediately afterwards, he's going to be 3 years older. He's going to have the eyes of a bat. He's going to have the blue within blue eyes, from his exposure to the spice. And we're going to be learning about, hopefully they touch on the fact, with the Fremen who, going into my history, I mean, I had Fremen in my Hotmail address from when I was 11 years old. Like, it's in my original Hotmail email.
Really? Wow.
Yes. Dune 2000 was one of the first games I really got into as a kid.
Huh.
Westwood Studios made or wasn't Westwood, it was Sierra, made a counter to Westwood Studios Command and Conquer with a Dune title based off of Dune 2, called Dune 2000. And that was my first real exposure to Dune. That's what got me to read the books. That's what got me to watch the Lynch movie.
Really? Okay.
And the Fremen as a culture have always been my favorite anything. Their stoicism, their secretiveness, their almost druid-like nature when it comes to the relationship with Arrakis itself. So a scene that they changed, and I'm sure, Hazel, I want to hear what you thought about this. The scene with, Liet Kynes, when she in this dies, is different than in the books, but I think it's actually even better than what it was in the books, which I don't say often.
I'm watching time here, Hazel. Yeah, let's hear it.
It was, I mean, it was weird. It's like so I keep hearing Gatr talk about the Lynch movie and that.
It's so short. It sounds like it's just so stripped from the book.
Well, it's just, I mean, to me, it's kind of trite.
Okay.
I mean, it's like, hey,
it was like a stage play.
It felt that way. It felt like a play. Yeah. And I guess that's the thing that, to me, it seems that the, like, parts of this movie, it's like they feel like maybe like Denny had to do it in a certain way just for the people that only saw the Dune movie from Lynch.
Yeah, because otherwise you turn into these ridiculously tangential conversations where it's, it's almost fractal-like how many different things you can go into, because Dune is as an established universe as Lord of the Rings. Like, Herbert put as much thought into Dune as Tolkien put into Lord of the Rings, including creating his own language. Right. He doesn't have his own alphabet and everything, but, Fremen is based off of their own native language and then Arabic being introduced.
See, I feel like I'm at a handicap here because I'm basing everything off this stupid 80s movie.
It's not that okay. You guys? I enjoyed. Don't get me wrong. I love that movie.
No.
I
went back and watched it again. Do you remember Flash Gordon about the same era? Remember the remake?
That's an apt comparison.
It reminds me of Flash Gordon. How kind of play like it's a play. It was very
like back when Klingon still wore gold lame on Star Trek.
Yeah. That's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of Flash Gordon.
It's cheesy. It's goofy.
Exactly. That's the word. Some
of it's actually way darker too, like the Guild Navigators and stuff. I thought was really well done in the Lynch version. A lot of the stuff was actually great. Right. But yeah, stuff like that where Denny was able to change things. So in the Lynch version, Liet Kynes, the environmentalist, who is ultimately a Fremen, she's actually, or he, I don't know how to describe it. If we're talking about the book, it's a he. In the movie, it's a she. Right. Anyone who's upset about that can fuck all the way off because it makes zero difference to the character.
It doesn't make any difference.
You're kind of just showing your true colors there. I get changing genders or race or anything like that when it's impactful to the character's origins or how they behave as a character. I get some of the trepidation there, but I think she was amazing. And in the book, she dies on what's known as, in the details, a pre-spice mass. So like as a sandworm is forming the spice, they have almost these plague-like pustules, except, earth-based or sand-based, that explode into spice. And that's how the spice gets into the atmosphere.
Oh, wow.
And there are explosions. Like it's like an earthquake, except outward. Mm-hmm. And Kynes ends up dying in a pre-mass explosion because he can't get out in time, but he's okay with it because he loves Arrakis that much. Again, it's that druidic relationship with the planet. And they're like, the Sardaukar find him at the environmental center, and she's able to summon a sandworm to take them all out and go with the sandworm. And you see the smile on her face as the ground is falling out from underneath. Like the concept of religious fanaticism and again, like these charismatic leaders, all of which are eventually poisonous. Like that's what Herbert's talking about.
You got all this from the book? Damn it.
Yes,
I'm totally
it's one
lost
of the greatest novels ever written.
I'm definitely getting I have to get the audiobook because I can't
get
myself to sit down and read.
It's so deep without being it's convoluted, but not in a frivolous way. It's like every question you have has an answer. Mm-hmm. And again, I loved the movie. There's a couple times I welled up during the movie because he did it so perfectly. Like perfectly. People are complaining about the set design or complaining about the goofy languages, and it's like that's what it's supposed to feel in. It's supposed to feel uncomfortable. The fact that Denny seemed to include Harkonnen designs in Arakeen, and it has that very brutalist design as opposed to big palaces and all of that. They're on the planet for 80 years. They would have influence on the structures, like the small details like that, the world building, the stupid ladle guy that isn't in the books, but like establishes like,
the palms.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, this is our hope. Like the prophecy of the Fremen, the prophecy of the Lisab al-Gaib eventually is that this Messiah figure will make Arrakis a paradise.
You know what?
He'll bring the rains.
You know what I'm thinking, though? Because Denny included so much really good stuff into this first movie, I think it'll make it easier to go back and read the book now that you have a big overview.
I think you'll have exactly. Well, Hazel said it perfectly. It's the intro to Dune. It makes people want to learn more.
Casual guide. Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if you liked it, then definitely dive into the book. I mean, just know that the book, they cut out a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And the book is a whole lot denser. And right. I think it's, I don't know. I almost want to say it's going to, the book is better, but at the same time, I want to see what Denny does with it, because it's going to be different.
Of course it's better, but again, Denny is giving it the what I call the Deadpool treatment. He's approaching the creation from a fan's perspective. Same thing Feige does with Marvel. Any of those guys, we're now generations past where you're not just a director taking an IP, you're a childhood fan of this franchise, and like it shows. Like it shows that he loves this, and this is his probably his opus. Honestly, I mean, you don't just get Dune. Like Blade Runner's a big deal, and he took it and ran. But like Dune is the greatest selling, like the best selling sci-fi novel of all time.
Well, just want to let you know, I just bought it, $26.99, full
worth every penny. I give away copies of Dune to my friends.
Yeah, and they do,
Genuinely.
and the Messiah, Dune Messiah was $14.99. But I'm going to read the first one, and then I'll go to the
It's
Messiah.
a bit of a read. Messiah is a lot shorter. Messiah is only like 250
Right.
pages.
Yeah, it was only
$14.99.
$14.99, but on iBooks, and I don't know wherever you get your audiobooks, $26.99, $23.99. I just went and bought it.
It's got that Star Wars effect, man. Lucas pulled a lot from Dune, or it's like you just want more. You want to learn more. Destiny too, with the lore. Like it's so rich that it's like any question you have has some sort of an answer. Like there's so much thought put into it.
It has 1,343 ratings, all most averaging 5 stars. So
I have one hard critique where I'm flat out saying they fucked up. Someone dropped the ball. Mm-hmm. There's an important ritual with the Fremen involving the Chris knife, and that's something they touched on in the movie, where their religion is this Chris knife. Okay. Like that is their religion.
Yeah, you mean it's not like something that they just pass off every now and then?
I thought it was not like an heirloom or something?
Well, no. The gift of the Chris knife was a big deal, and that was the thing. But there's a hard rule among the Fremen, and they show it in the movie, which is how I know it's a mistake and not a choice. That if you were to draw your Chris knife, it must shed blood before it's sheathed again.
Really? Yep.
And they show that after the Canley fight with Jameis, where they all had their Chris knives out, and you see them all roll back their sleeve and cut their arm. Mapes didn't do that, and she does it in the book. She pulls out the Chris knife, and they think she's an assassin, but it's a gift. And as she's explaining everything to him, she cuts her hand.
I wondered why she did that.
Yeah. Yeah, because in the book they think she's about to try and kill Jessica, so like all the Atreides guards are like their guns are immediately all trained on her.
And the silent hand signals, was that in the book too?
It might have been. If it wasn't, I love it, and how the audio kind of mutes out whenever they're talking to each other that way.
I got a little
beautiful direction.
I got a little the Force vibes there, Star Wars, when I saw the hands.
Way less Force, way more SWAT team.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
That's what I got. I got that like Spec Ops training.
That's
like
true.
That's a Navy SEAL thing where they're having full conversations using just hand signals.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Okay.
And the fact that one of the guys in the Thopter was deaf was beautiful. I think that is in the books. I think that's actually part of the books. I think I do remember that scene where they're being dropped off. I think one of the Harkonnen were deaf, and I think they do use hand signals for that. But yeah, everything was done so perfectly for what was there. The casting, the acting, the costumes were a little goofy, but they've grown on me. I get why they made the decisions they made, and why wouldn't they be in armor instead of just military uniforms? Like, it makes sense. They're on a like the planet wants to kill you. Why wouldn't you have some sort of armor? Mm-hmm. I think the Sardaukar were finally given some love and finally shown, like the ones in the Lynch movie where they're just in like hazmat suits. It's like they're just goofy. Like they have all of this provenance, and there's no payoff. With this, you're like, oh, these are space Vikings. Okay. And how they're out thinking. So like the Harkonnens are getting slaughtered by the Atreides, who are the best fighters, especially because they've been training on Arrakis for months now. House Atreides is feared for its military prowess. But the fact that the Sardaukar, take advantage and are flanking and out strategizing these guys that are fighting their hearts out is a big deal. The fact that they show Duncan taking them out, they kind of understated that in the movie, I think. To the folks that don't know about, I think it was in Children of Dune that it's actually discussed. It's rare for one Sardaukar to be killed, and basically the idea is like, if you got one, there was another one behind you with a knife in your back. Like, that's how they fought. Duncan killed 19 in that fight in the books. 19 of the most elite fighters in the world by himself to protect the Atreides family.
Right.
And fun fact, I don't know if Jason Momoa even knows this, but if you know Dune as a whole project, you're going to see Jason Momoa again. Fun fact.
What?
I don't know if they're going to get into it, but they talk a little bit about House Talaxu. Or Talaxu. There's multiple L's against consonants. I think it's Talaxu is how it's pronounced. Which are the kind of messed up mad scientists of the Dune universe. So you have the Spacing Guild, but they're like lawful neutral. Like they are the bounty hunters guild, if you will. Like they'll work for anyone for money. It's all about the profit for them. Like they operate neutrally. They operate through emissaries, X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
But the House Talaxu has a nasty habit of making clones. And they're typically imperfect half-machine clones.
No way.
And I believe it's first in Children of Dune, but then 1,000 times after, once you get into God Emperor of Dune, there's a character introduced named Hayt, Hayt, and he's the Atreides House Mentat for Leto II. And you don't really think anything of it until you find out he is a Gola, which is, it's not just a clone. So there's a clone that exists in Dune, which is incredibly rare. And then a Gola is like if you were to photocopy somebody, like if you Xerox to person. Golas are like exos. Actually, a great comparison. An exo that's been reset a few too many times. And Duncan comes back hundreds of times.
What?
To the point where there's a line in God Emperor of Dune where the giant sandworm Leto has an assistant named Mineo. He literally says Mineo another after one of his Duncans dies. Yeah, they are factory produced at a certain point in the story. So Jason Momoa, technically, as far as appearances in novels, Duncan Idaho is the main character of Dune. But yeah, they understated that, like, he fought in a way that was like legendary, like the chesty puller of the Atreides, army.
You're saying that Duncan Idaho is the main character.
And that's more of a joke, but as far as appearances go, yes.
Okay. I was lost
because he's in every one of the Frank Herbert books.
Okay,
and then you get into like Chapter House Dune and all that.
I would watch it if he were, like.
Well, he's a Mentat, and those, so he's a little bit different. Though. Oh yeah, absolutely. And Jason Momoa, I think, is the perfect combination of bringing it in and also being a fighter. Like he is that character.
I can't wait. Can't wait to see for sure.
And then let's talk about Josh Brolin real quick as Gurney Halleck.
Yes.
And the immediate connection in that father figure role he has with Paul. Spoiler alert, he's not dead. Yeah, he's hanging out at Siege to Beer.
I didn't know where he went when they were bombing everything. I didn't know where he went.
Yeah,
he just randomly showed up
on screen.
Yeah.
He's hanging out at the Siege is what it is. He got there before Jessica and Paul did.
Oh yes, that's right. Okay.
He just randomly showed up in the Lynch movie.
Yeah,
Gurney is still out there.
There's so many holes in that Lynch movie. God.
Because Lynch gets into the details without actually explaining why the details are important, is what it is. There's a lot of exposition.
It's all over the place, man. It's all over the place.
He just tells you, like, this is a thing. This is why this is important. And, like, outside of this is my Gom Jabbar, like, isn't really necessary. Also, by the way, that was a throwback to the Lynch movie. That specific scene, like, was very much, I think, a tribute to Lynch's
the training,
the hand scene.
Yeah. I knew exactly what was going to happen there.
Oh God, I don't know who's cast as the Reverend Mother, but her performance in that scene was fantastic.
I can tell you here. Was it Charlotte Rampling? Oh, there's a couple.
That sounds right.
Yeah, that's her. That's her. Tessa Charlotte Rampling. Nice. English actress, model, singer,
and we'll see her again too. She's a very important character.
Yep.
I'm curious to see who the Emperor is.
Yeah, so was I.
I wanted to know so badly because they do show the Emperor.
Yep.
They show it in the Lynch movie.
Oh yeah, he's working directly with the Harkonnens, and it's obvious. And that's the tragedy that they show in the books and in the Lynch movies. Is like everyone sees the betrayal, but Leto.
Right.
Everyone sees that it's a setup. And he's just too lawful good to see that the evil around him. There's also the complications that they don't really talk about other than the line cousin being used, that like they're related. I mean, Paul is Vladimir Harkonnen's grandson. Jessica's his daughter.
Right.
But Gurney out, you think he's definitely in the second movie. Okay.
Oh yeah, he's a huge part. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he was in
he's the one who trains
the
the Fedaykin. Yeah.
Right. That's right.
He becomes Paul's like master at arms.
Gotcha. Since Duncan Idaho's not there now, so
yeah, Duncan's very dead for the rest of this story.
Right. But you do think that he'll be back in future movie?
Oh, 100%. That is a hugely important. I know he's going to be back.
All right. I can't wait to see how they enter him in, but okay.
Also, I mean, standard movie rule, if they don't die on screen, they're not dead. And sometimes when they do die on screen, they're not dead.
Well, I want to make sure we cover everything in here. What else do we want to cover before
there's so much that they did beautifully. Like the visual inclusion of the desert mouse.
Oh,
Paul being inspired, because in the Lynch movie, he asked that question out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In the books, you kind of get it because there's a scene when he gets out of the still tent, which is exactly what happens in the movie, where he's watching the mouse kind of hop along as he's waiting for his mother to wake up.
Right. And how the mouse gets behind that webbing to shield itself.
I don't think that's in the books, but
no, it's not in the
he's
books.
more astounded that it survives. But yeah, that really emphasizes,
right.
Why the hell, like, would he ask the question later on, like, what do you want to be known as? This is your name within the siege, but what do you want everyone else to know you as? And he asked Stilgar, what's the name of the mouse that survives in the desert?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, we call that one Muad'Dib. He's like, I would like to be known as Paul Muad'Dib.
Wow.
And that's why it's such an important thing, which Denny gets, and he's setting that up so that payoff is going to be there.
He exactly did, didn't he?
That's what I'm saying. Like, his visual storytelling is setting up the payoffs, and it is showing so much. And just like the small things too, like Paul's moment where he's seeing the spice in the air for the first time.
Yeah,
and goes into what's effectively a seizure vision.
Yes. And everyone thought he was just sensitive to it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Didn't even know why.
Yeah, because the Fremen use it for literally everything. The scene you see where the scene in the movie, they don't explain it in the movie where they're all spitting into that cup. They're making coffee. They're making spiced coffee.
Yeah, right. I remember that part.
But yeah, the details he's setting up, and it's all for payoffs later. Like, he's doing the things he does, like Hazel said at the very beginning. The things he does amazingly. There's just a lot he doesn't include, and us as fans, we get why. Because explaining this stuff, we're supposed to do this for 20 minutes, and we're not even talking about Dune. We're talking about the differences between the movie and what we'd like to see and where it might be going. Like, you want to get into the actual nitty gritty of Dune, there's even more than that. Mm-hmm. Hazel, I got to ask you though, how'd you feel about the ornithopters?
I loved them.
The dragonflies?
I think they were perfect.
That was the coolest thing. I was like, I don't know why. It was just beautiful. I was just over the moon about how
it was represented perfectly too. When you wrote the book, it was the middle of Vietnam, or the beginning of.
Yeah.
And like, helicopters were the new technology in the military, and ornithopters were supposed to be helicopters, except they had wings that flapped. Because on Caladan, there's not a lot of land, so they did the good job of explaining, we ruled by air and sea power. And the ornithopters were supposed to be this kind of amalgamation of helicopter technology of the 60s. And they showed them like helicopters, like, perfectly. And I'm like, you nailed it. You did it right.
Yeah, they were neat.
The capital ships were really cool.
The big globes. Yeah.
I feel like Gatr Prime should have been a little more industrial dystopia than it was, but I'm okay with what they did. Because it feels very foreign still. It feels very alien. It feels very almost like the darkness has had an impact there. It feels a little pyramid shippy. Like, that's the first thing I thought. I'm like, oh shit, he must play Destiny. Because
really, I thought I got like, what the hell, Gatr, your movie,
2049.
Yeah,
Blade Runner.
Yeah, Blade Runner. I got Blade Runner vibes.
Oh, the camera angles for sure. Those high angles where they're like 30 feet above the ground.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, it's Blade Runner.
Go back and watch the palace scenes on Gatr Prime though, and like tell me that's not like a PG-13 version of a pyramid ship.
Now that I've learned all this, I have a feeling I'll be watching it one more time.
Oh, Dune has influenced so much, and you don't even realize. It's Dune. Like, Star Wars wouldn't exist without Dune and samurai movies.
Yep.
It's Frank Herbert was a master. I mean, I would put him up there with Mark Twain. Or I guess like more aptly Tolkien.
And this book was written in the 60s.
1963, I believe.
I wasn't even
64?
born. Wasn't even born.
And the thing is, this isn't a cult classic. I mean, that was the book that took America by storm. Yeah. Like, everyone was talking about Dune, and when Lynch picked it up for the movie after the failed attempt of I keep wanting to say Tarkovsky. I know that's not his name. Jodorowsky, the guy that was supposed to make a Dune movie and didn't make the movie because he couldn't figure out how to do it, and then they made a documentary about that, which you haven't seen, by the way. I think it's Jodorowsky's Dune. They made a whole documentary about the failed first movie in the 70s.
Where is this? Is this on YouTube?
I think it's on Amazon. It's probably on YouTube.
Okay, I'll Google it.
Yeah, they made a whole documentary about this movie that never happened.
Wow.
Because where Lynch made it up and just bullshitted his way through what he understood. Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime Video, but I think it's only for sale. I'm sure it exists somewhere. He couldn't figure out how to do it. He's like, this book is too weird. Like, I can't make this into a movie. where Dune or Lynch was just like, I guess we'll do that. I guess they're all going to be in sequence dresses today.
Flash.
Which even if you want to talk about the miniseries for a moment, Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. There was a lot of side things that came
really
from
close,
this.
though.
Came from the book, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to learn about the Dune book, accuracy-wise, the miniseries actually does a pretty darn good job.
Okay.
It's just very hokey, low-budget sci-fi. Like, Children of Dune's really good.
I did see that on. I did look that up on YouTube. Yeah. Yep.
It's like if what was that? Babylon 5 was a Dune adaptation.
Gotcha.
Like it's just like really like low budget, like bad CG, terrible costumes,
low budget,
but the story is accurate.
And
it's actually my favorite portrayal of the Baron in that.
Okay.
But Dune, man.
Yeah, I'm looking at the clock here. We're approaching an hour. I don't want to go too much further than that.
No, I know. I'm sorry. I can go on. I apologize ahead of time.
No, dude. No, I love your enthusiasm, dude. I really do.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who want to know more about Dune are going to listen to this episode and go, "Oh, okay, I'm going to get the book," just like I just did.
It's basically like it's a whole lot deeper than what you were shown.
It's like Lord of the Rings. The Jackson movies did a great job of kind of hitting. He changed a couple of things that pissed people off, but ultimately, he kind of hit the keynotes of the original books, and he did those very well.
Tolkien books were
he simplified it.
So dense, man.
Oh, dude. And then you want to get into the Silmarillion on top of it, where Tolkien wrote an entire book of like, this is all the shit I couldn't put into a book, but these are different stories about, the world I built.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
The mind.
You want to give final thoughts?
Yeah.
And
let's do final thoughts. We'll start with you, Nullzy. Final thoughts.
I'm going to give it a 9. I can't say it's perfect because the critiques about it ending at a weird spot, especially if you... I think it's actually worse if you know what's happening next.
I kind of got that feel. I'm like,
he did the best he could. It is the end of the first book. It is the best stopping point you could hope for, but it was so just like anticlimactic. But like, what else was he gonna do?
Well,
there's no other way to end it.
It's his transition from that life into his new life. So I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, and so what I'm telling you is the 9 is not for the story because it's incomplete. I think the whole whatever he ends up doing, I think will be a 10 for me. I think on its own, it's an 8 or a 9. Purely, if you don't care about the story, go watch it. The one heartbreaking thing is it's not in real IMAX. It's only in digital IMAX. It's not in 70 millimeter, which kind of broke my heart because I wanted to go down to Jordan's Furniture to the real IMAX theater where it's like the 400-foot screen and not just the big one at your local AMC and see it in legit IMAX because I would have paid $25.
The full 360. I got you. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so I would say I'm going to go 9 out of 10 just because even if you don't care about Dune, the cinematography, the audio work, the acting, just everything about it is gorgeous.
And remember, this was supposed to be out last year, but because of the pandemic and
it's been done for a year.
It's been done.
It's been sitting in the can.
And I was actually surprised that they had the second movie on hold. They wanted to see how it fared.
The ballsiest move in cinematic history.
I would think the way giant movies are made today that they'd be already ahead of the game.
He walked up to the legendary studio table and he put his dick just right there. He's like, "This is what I made you. I'm not asking for a second movie.
Wow,
but you're gonna want to give me one." It's like, we're not doing this all in one movie. You're getting half a story. And they could have been like, no, we're not going to do it. We don't have the money for it. And that would have been it.
Yeah.
But he's just like, this is it. I think it's good enough. And the day it released in America, because it's actually been out in Europe for, I think, like a month now.
Yeah.
Right.
The day it released in America, all of the investors, like all the articles are like, yeah, investors are now bullish about making a sequel. Like as soon as they saw the response, they're like, no, we're doing this. Like it got greenlit. Officially like a week later, but like spiritually the next day, everyone's like, no, yeah, we're making this movie.
Yeah,
like,
I never
people want to see this.
When I heard it was on hold, I was like, oh, that's happening.
You know what? I'm going to give it a 9.5 for a personal reason.
Okay. Hazel.
It's no longer my weird little hobby.
All right, Hazel.
It's now in the pop culture mainstream in a big way again. I don't need to explain why I have Fremen and it's not pronounced Freeman.
Freeman, you mean? Yeah.
Freemason?
Yeah.
Freemason?
Like, I don't need to have these conversations anymore.
Good.
I am now the person that people can be like, hey, what's this about? For every bit of lore I don't know about Destiny, and I'm not a chronicler in Destiny 4, for Dune, I'm that guy now.
Well,
I can talk about stuff. And I'm not even I don't know all of it. I haven't read all the books. I think most of the Brian Herbert books are absolute dog shit.
Sounds like we got the right person to talk about Dune tonight.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't want to be cynical about it. I'm excited about all of this. I nitpick, but like, again, ultimately, I don't care. I think that what is on the plate there is masterwork. And I think as a total package, it will be a genre defining movie for our era.
The next Star Wars, right?
Let's not use those words with Dune, please.
Okay, I'm not a purist. I'm sorry.
No, it's not about Dune versus Star Wars, because Star Wars is right below Dune for me. Child of the 90s, the expanded universe, but like,
you know what? I have to agree. I think I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I have to say Star Wars is not quite as intricate, at least in my mind, as Dune sounds.
No, it's
like
not.
It is.
Star Wars is
yeah. We won't get into there. We won't get down that hole.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It's a space western.
Yes, I understand. It's the samurai culture. I get it.
It's designed different.
Dune is an Arthurian tale. It's like a King Arthur tale that just happens to take place on a foreign planet.
Right.
You got wizards, you've got knights, you've got kings dying, you've got successions of thrones, you've got evil wizards manipulating things behind the scenes. Right. You have prophecy, you have magic weapons, you have everything you would get from a Arthurian tale.
Right.
You know, just no Sir Galahad, although I guess we do too. Like, so yeah, 9.5 out of 10. I'm going to shut the hell up now. Let you guys do your thing.
Hazel, final thoughts.
It's going to sound weird for me to say this, but I agree 100% with what Nullzy said, but my scores are completely different. I would say in reading the book, I would say part of me just is hung up on it. So I would say like a 7 if you've read the book, just because it's part 1 too. But if you've never read the book, I'd probably say that you maybe give it an 8, just because of how beautiful it is. And then, I mean, I think overall, I think it probably will be easily like a 9, maybe a 10, hopefully.
Didn't you just say you were giving different numbers? You just agreed with my entire opinion.
I did. I agreed.
I'm trying to understand your grade here. So what's your final grade here?
So, okay, if like I said, if you've read the book, I'd say a 7.
Okay. And if you saw the Frank Herbert film, the Lynch film. Sorry.
If you saw the Lynch film, I mean, I'm sorry for you. Watch the real one. Watch this one.
I mean, I love that movie. I'm sorry, I can't hate the Lynch movie.
It's kind of a culty movie. I mean,
it's like the animated Lord of the Rings.
I still go by just to hear Steen go, "I wish it." I still go back to watch that scene.
The righteous.
Yes, exactly. All right, so you're giving it a 7, right, Hazel?
I'm giving it a 7. I just can't get past it for some reason.
All right, we gotta have the hard ass in the group. I know.
We're buying into Dune futures.
Yes. Exactly. Yes.
You're conservative.
Are bright,
but you're not going all in. I get it. Okay. My final thoughts. Nullzy laid it out perfectly. It's the way that Denny, the director, can lay out a visual story without having, like with Lynch, has to kind of just say, well, this is the way it is and this is the way it is. And this is the reason why I love his Blade Runner movie so much, is the visualization is it's just like porn to me. I mean, I just love this richness in visual effects, and I'm big on visual special effects in movies. I know a lot of people aren't, but I have to feel like I'm really floating there. And when I saw it on the in the big Dolby theater, which has the super contrast projectors, super high resolution screens versus just a regular projection, and the rumble seats, and the moving sound, and literally when you're hovering in the what do they call those ships? the dragonfly
The
ships.
ornithopters?
Ornithopters.
Or thopters, for short.
When they were hovering above it, looking at the spice miners, and my seat was just vibrating. I felt like I was literally in the ship behind everybody.
My heart and stomach sank so many times. Like the going to hammering what you're talking about, especially I'm going to go back probably this week and see it in theaters again.
My poor dad, he wanted to go see it because he's the one that introduced me to Star Wars in '78. I remember waiting in line around the building to get in to watch that film. It was so iconic and so original, and it was booked. My wife and I had 2 seats that came available at the last minute, and we jumped on it. And I think I'm going to go back and watch it at least with my dad because it's such an experience.
I might try and do that too. Yeah, it's that the invasion of Arrakeen. And like the scene where the heavy las cannons from the Harkonnen ships are chasing down Duncan and like everything.
Yeah.
And there's just like the it felt so real. Like it felt like you're actually watching like please pardon my metaphor here, but I can't think of any other way to really describe what I was feeling. And maybe it's just the rabid fan in me, and I hate to draw this particular comparison because it's heavy-handed and it's kind of I had the way you felt on 9/11 when you saw the towers fall.
Mm-hmm.
Just that like sinking like despair of like just everything falling apart. I know the story, and he was still visually able to make me feel all of those things again.
That's my point. The visual.
It was
visual
just
effects.
like I welled up. I was emotional.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah, I get it.
It was, you really got that feeling of desperation.
Yep. Now I usually use a letter grade when I score my movies, but I will go a number, and I'm gonna have to give it a 9 as well because compared to the Lynch movie, it's not even close.
Oh no,
it's not even
close. Cinema. It's cinema. That's what it is. It's cinema.
Yes.
Send
So
it to cons and it'll hold up.
I still think of Flash Gordon flying in on those fake robotic wings, getting carried. And I keep thinking of that. Queen actually even sung the song.
That bitchin' Queen song though.
That's all I remember is that bitchin' Queen song. Anyway, yeah, I give it a solid 9, and I cannot wait for 2023. I just wish they were a little ahead of the game like Star Wars usually is. Star Wars is usually really ahead of the game when it comes to production because it takes so long to make these movies. They're so immense. Casting, outstanding, and I really hope Duncan Idaho's back. I really hope so.
He won't be. He won't. I'm sorry. He won't be in the movies. That's Children of Dune. Not.
Okay.
It's a whole different story.
Okay.
You're talking about
eventually,
Gurney.
maybe
Gurney will.
Gurney. Yeah, I will.
Yes.
I will definitely. I'm just sad that Jason Momoa is not going to be back. But okay, I can live with that. I'll take Josh Brolin. I'm good with that. I like him.
Yeah,
too.
Josh Brolin needs another sci-fi accolade.
He's exactly my age, by the way. almost to the month. Almost exactly my age. So okay, I wanted to mention one thing before we move on. Before we leave this special episode tonight, it has been confirmed. Dune Part 2 will be released in October of 2023. It had a budget of $165 million, and it is already, as of today's date, grossed $236.1 million worldwide. So
Hold on, I'm putting something into the chat real quick that you might want to put on a show note.
Okay, you got it. Countdown to Dune Part 2, 719 days, exactly. I'll put that in the show notes.
22 hours, 28 minutes, and 17 seconds at the time of this recording.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, one thing I wanted to mention real quick too about Dune is, have you guys heard that they're going to do I guess on HBO Max, a TV series about the Bene Gesserit?
I heard that.
Ooh.
I know if they were smart, they would have a TV series on like side projects and side stories. I love when they do that. I love it. It just gets you even deeper. So
I want another good Dune game. We haven't gotten a Dune game since Emperor Battled for Dune, which I think came out in like 2003.
We have a Dune game. It's called Destiny. Okay, don't hit me. Don't hit me. All right.
Oh.
All right.
Hit him. I see nothing.
Fight. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this special episode and talking about Dune. And we cannot wait, obviously, but we hope that you got at least a little deeper look into the movie. Thank you for joining us. And later, Guardian.
Long live the fighters.
Fight like demons.
man, the bagpipes got me, man. I was dying.
But here's the thing. How did they? I only heard one bagpipe. All of a sudden, I hear an army of bagpipes. I'm like, where the hell are the other bagpipes?
That's not even in the books. Like in the books, the Atreides are supposed to be like amalgamation of like the Spanish and Greek cultures.
Right.
And that's why they all look very French in this, which makes sense. I think that was all in mind. But the fucking bagpipes, I know that Greece has bagpipes, but I was just so taken aback. They were awesome, but like it was just so like
yes, it was so cool. It was so ceremonial when they walked out of the ship.
Would have been better with a battle pug. Just saying.
Okay.